So for my video, I'm going to talk about 5 key takeaways from the class. And so in doing this, I'm making a recipe of Dance 2010 and the 5 key ingredients needed to make up the course. So the 5 ingredients we're going to be using today is dough, butter, cinnamon, sugar, and icing. So all these together make up a cinnamon roll, and that represents Dance 2020. So the first ingredient I'm going to talk about is spatial relationships, which stands for dough. And so this is how we can use space in our everyday life and how the elements of dance can be found in any activity that we do. So for example, we had to do elements of dance for one of our assignments and through space. And so some of my examples were the path of how the drive-thru was curved at the Chick-fil-A I worked at. And some of the cars were out of my reach, and then I focused on one car at a time. So these are just a few examples of what spatial relationships were, and I thought they were really interesting, and I'm very glad we got to learn about that in this class.
So the next ingredient we're going to be talking about is the butter. And so this represents the significance of circle dances. This was the next thing we learned about, and I was really interested in it because I didn't know a lot about circle dances or anything really about dance until this class. And so we got to learn about what circle dances stood for. So they stood for community, protection, like circle the wagon. I learned what that meant when everybody would round up their wagons in a circle to protect everyone. There was no single leader. It was representing equality, unity, and then you can see and connect visually with everyone in the group since you're in a circle. It was continuous, never-ending, represented wholeness. And so the circle dance was a style of dance done in a circle to music accompaniment such as rhythm instruments and singing. And it probably was the oldest known dance formation and was part of community life from when people first started to dance. And unlike line dancing, circle dancers are in physical contact with each other. The connection is made by hand to hand, finger to finger, or hands on shoulders. And it was a type of dance where anyone could just join in without the need of partners. So if you didn't have a partner, it wasn't a problem. Generally, the participants would follow a leader around the dance floor while holding the hands of the dancers beside them. And then, despite its immense reputation in the Middle East and Southeast Europe, circle dances have also had a historical prominence in the west of Europe, also in South America, Tibet, and with the Native Americans, which was the ghost dance for them. It is also used in form of worship with various religious traditions, including the Church of England and the Islamic or Zikr dances. So that is basically what the significance of dance circles is, and that's one of the things that really impacted me in this class also. And so overall, this represents the butter ingredient in the cinnamon roll.
The next ingredient we're going to be talking about is cinnamon. So we mix the cinnamon and sugar together to make the cinnamon rolls, like the cinnamon sugar mix. But the cinnamon by itself represents the importance of social dance. And so the primary purpose of social dances were social, pleasure, entertainment, learning by observation and informal demonstration, reflects the values of its society, and then it's passed along or challenged. And it provides an arena where you can challenge group values, experiment with behavior. And these dances weren't usually passed down. They're usually based on the generation they came up in, and they were normally really easy to learn since everybody was doing them. So ethnic dance was applied to group dances that grew from few tribal ritual dances, and they were non-Western. Folk dance was often applied to dances of European origin. There were courtship dances, which followed a pattern of display or flirtation between the sexes. Couple dancing is a European invention that does not exist in many cultures or cultures with arranged marriages. Native Americans and some Asian cultures. Another example is war dances. These were weapons displaying strength and agility of group or individual, keeping soldiers fit and prepared. And then there's also communal dances, which was done in cultures where cooperation is valued above competitiveness, an important way of transmitting culture to the next generation. So culture will define its sex as do the dance in unison or separated into male and female roles. Example, the English and Irish country dances, the Hora of Israel, Cook Island dance, female dancers of Morocco. And then one of the second to last ingredients for these cinnamon rolls we're about to make is sugar. And we're going to talk about how that represents the do's and don'ts of cultural appropriation. So one of the examples we had to do was list differences between cultural appropriation and cultural misappropriation. And before, I didn't realize there was a difference between them until this class, but it gave me a really better understanding of cultural appropriation, which sometimes can be beneficial, and then cultural misappropriation, which is just kind of like making fun of it. So I'm going to talk about the benefits first. One of the benefits was Picasso did a lot of borrowing from African art, and Monet and many other artists were inspired by Chinese and Japanese art. Another benefit was it could be a kind of fostering of communication between cultures, especially if it's not all one way. People learning about the preconceptions and ways of thinking of a different culture through their art and other things that are appropriate, it can lead to people in countries, particularly third world countries, becoming known for what they do and appreciated for what they do. And then those were some of the benefits of it. Cultural misappropriation, it differs from acculturation or assimilation, and the appropriation or misappropriation refers to the adoption of these cultural elements in a colonial manner. These elements are copied from a minority culture by members of the dominant culture, and these elements are used outside of their original cultural context, sometimes even against the expressed stated wishes of representatives of the originating culture. And some of the examples we talked about was Kim Kardashian. She's been kind of a controversial topic with her hair being in cornrows, and that's representing a different culture from hers. And then just in general, like Halloween costumes, you can look up some on Amazon, and you'll be surprised at how blunt and honestly appalling some of them are. But yeah, that's another thing I learned, the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural misappropriation. And the last ingredient for these cinnamon rolls we're making from scratch is icing. And so this represents the base guidelines for critiquing dances. So we're going to explain some ways that we can critique dances and compare ones over time to each other. So I didn't really know how to critique dances before this class. I'd never had to, and that's one of the things I took away from this class was how to look at a dance from a critiquing standpoint instead of just an entertainment standpoint. And so one of the things, I'm just going to list some of the things that we were told to look at so that we could critique the dance. So we would describe what we see, like how do the dancers use the space, what kind of movements do they do, how many dancers are there, do they dance together all the time, are there any props used, and then we would give detail on all of those. And then we would talk about how the dance made us feel and why it made us feel that way. And then we're trying to understand what the choreographer was trying to convey based on the title, the music, movement, like is his conveyment coming across to us as we want it to. And then, yeah, that's basically all the ways that we use to, critique the dances, and that's another thing I really appreciated and took away from this class, and that represents the icing.
So now you can see the 5 ingredients we use to make these delicious cinnamon rolls, might I add. We use the dough, butter, cinnamon, sugar, and icing, which represents the 5 key takeaways I got from this class, which were spatial relationships, significance of circle dances, importance of social dance, do's and don'ts of cultural appropriation, and then base guidelines for critiquing dances. Thank you.